Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another movie spoiler review, and we'll be wrapping up the Sam Raimi Spider-Man universe, the Spider-Man 3. And I won't say this is tough, but it's just something like, rewatching this after so many rewatching the Sam Raimi movies, and I'm pretty sure once I get to the Mark Webb ones in the next couple of weeks, well, at least the next consecutive 2 weeks, uh, being away from it and coming back to it after so long, because I got a little older, I'm a little bit more knowledgeable and appreciate the nuance of these films. I can now like look at it from a different lens. Of course, Spider-Man 3 is definitely still low tier out of the three Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Don't get me wrong. But now that, uh, like I did with the other two films, I, I can see like certain, obvious certain things that's like would be considered bad. I can like look beyond that and see what was being tried to do, and I more or less been able to like suss out certain things, at least give my perspective on Spider-Man 3 after coming back to this. Now, of course, a lot of people reprising their roles. Rosemary Harris, Aunt May, J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson, Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, Kristen Dunst, Mary Jane, James Franco, uh, uh, Harry Osborn, and we got shoot, what was her doggone name? Who played Gwen Stacy? It's the first time we actually get like a live action Gwen Stacy in a Spider-Man film, which a lot of people were hyped for, and I'm pretty sure it was discussed back then, uh, but we didn't have like Twitter and Facebook to like voice our opinions all which way or whatever. But it's like looking back on it, I don't think it. It's very low tier as far as like bad choices, but it's still like Gwen Stacy. Aside from the alternate universe where she's Spider Woman, she is like just more known for the comics of when she died. One of Spider-Man's biggest failures uh, in his hero career. And anytime you look up well, I'm pretty sure if you look up Gwen Stacy right now, Spider Woman comes up. But not so long ago, the next snap, it was the first thing. If you Google it, Google Gwen Stacy, it's almost like the first thing comes up, like beyond anything else. That's like the first 10 things probably will be just her neck snapping. Currently, right now, the first, at least maybe the first 5 things will be, well, no, then again, out of the Spider Verse, it's been very popular. So I'm pretty sure now the first 10 things is Spider Woman, Spider Gwen, which, you know, side note, because I told a lot of family members and friends this, a long time ago. Like, if I ever have a kid, I personally want a boy and name it after me, just like I'm named after my father. But in the event, well, in the event if I have like 2 girls, one I'm naming her Carly, uh, and if I had a second daughter, I would name her Gwen, Gwendolyn. Like Gwendolyn is short, and Gwen for short, and because like I just love Spider Gwen so much. I love the name Gwen, and it is just something like after, especially after Spider Verse, I grew a more appreciation of Gwen Stacy. Uh, but maybe so more so because of the Spider Gwen universe, not the main continuity Gwen Stacy. Uh, but anyway, uh, this is I mean Sam Raimi has been on record apologizing the way Spider-Man 3 came out because we all know it wasn't his fault because Sam Raimi was like, just like Joel Schumacher, one of the like nicest people in the world, and the fact that he had to apologize about like how Spider-Man 3 turned out, because especially after it's supposed to be like a send off in this trilogy, and it kind of like after coming off the amazing movie as Spider-Man 2 was, it kind of like, once it crashed and burned. I think we all kind of, I unironically like it now, but at the time it was like a dud. Maybe not box office wise, but after a couple of weeks passed since it's released in the movie theaters, people was like a group more and more understanding like this is like not good at all. Most because studio interference. As soon as they get a whiff of a cash cow, they want to put their input in every doggone thing at that time. Still somewhat today, but I think they starting to, at least most studios starting to understand to let their directors do their job and not trying to micromanage everything. But at the time, it's like, oh, we got like a hot little thing right now. So this is gonna be a wrap up. We need to like make sure, since we're not gonna get no more movies, we need to throw in like Venom in there, and throw in Gwen Stacy. People love Gwen Stacy, and like Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire pretty much only wanted to tell Sandman. And I think, when they cast Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, spitting image of Sandman, mind you, is like, this is the first time I ever seen Thomas Hayden Church in anything. I'm pretty sure he's been in other stuff, but this is the one that kind of like cemented like, the face. Every time I see his face, I remember Sandman because of him. And I think that's true for a lot of people who sees that, because he has a very distinct face. It's kind of like a kind of chiseled face, and it's like, I kid you not, I'm pretty sure anybody point him out, like 9 times out of 10, they're gonna remember Spider-Man 3, Sandman. But anyway, of course, the story goes, a meteorite crashed to Earth while Peter and Mary Jane are in the park, and globs on, and the Venom symbiote, springs out of the little meteorite, latches on to the little motorbike of Parker's. And this is the thing here. If you ever, at least read the Spider-Man comic about the symbiote, and attaching to Peter Parker, and then this whole several stories in this long arc involving this thing, and how it kept slowly corrupting Peter Parker until eventually he had to take it off before he turns into a monster. It came to Earth. If you at least seen like the 90s Spider-Man TV show, like I mentioned before in my review for Spider-Man 2, when they introduced John Jameson, he's an astronaut. He went to space, for an exploration on the moon or something like that. And we didn't knew at the time. It's kind of like past several years when the symbiote's been like retconned into being in this more peaceful alien race on the planet Clintar. Is a Clintarian alien that I forget how, but it kind of like sprang from its home planet, and I guess got lost along the way. But it got on the planet where they had those secret wars. Deadpool got a hold of it first. Just a little FYI in case you don't know. Because when symbiotes, these symbiotes, climb onto a being, they, the host personality kind of like, rub off on them. And if you're dealing with like somebody Deadpool, it makes that particular symbiote kind of crazy. Now, then, after Deadpool just quickly took it off because he didn't like the color scheme or something. Peter Parker found it when his suit got ruined in like a fight previously. He got a hold of it, and then it became. And when he got back home, he kept it as like his brand new suit until he realized what it was doing to him. But in the 90s TV show, it was on a moon. It lasted on to one astronauts. Hitched a ride on Jameson's space or rocket ship back to Earth. Peter Parker, helped get the shuttle to land safely. It lobbed onto him. Then it progressed into like the Venom arc in the TV show. But that is pretty much like the short version of usually what we know how Venom came to Earth. This one, they kind of like, all right, fell to Earth in a meteorite and happened to land coincidentally near Peter Parker. Not much, not very interesting. But now since through the course of the past couple of movies, the city of New York became a little more. You see, Spider-Man is like a beloved hero, and now Peter is just like, I guess, if you look at it this way, because I know it seems like it's weird how like you become like very self-absorbed in itself, but I mean I'm pretty sure other people has brought this up, but looking at it now through the lens of, because after you've watching this back to back and see the progression, you remember how he started in the first Spider-Man movie. This nerdy kid, he looked over by everybody, either looked over or looked down upon, and then by the time he became a superhero, he was still like, very few people liked him at all. No appreciation whatsoever. Like, and that was the whole point of like Spider-Man 2, when it's like you gotta learn to like, you should not have to do this necessarily for the admiration or just to, get the likes. Essentially, you do it because it's right. But now that he's getting the admiration, genuine admiration, by the entire city, it's kind of like it definitely fed his ego a bit. So it's kind of like it's kind of like one of those child stars that gets to stardom too fast without any kind of like without preparing or any kind of like wisdom or whatever to properly prepare him for all that, so he won't lose himself. That's what essentially is going on with Peter at this point. He's not necessarily neglecting at first MJ's feelings. I mean, both, just want to put it out there, both of them in this is like part of the worst, it's like the worst depiction of how Mary Jane and Peter Parker's relationship should be. Yes, in the comics, they, currently right now, I think it's like, it's being solidified. They're going to be like, obviously permanently together and then eventually married. That's what's going on currently. But in the past, it's always been like strained. She gets annoyed that he got drop everything to be Spider-Man and doesn't have time for her, or that melodrama stuff. But sometimes in the comics, it's written pretty good melodrama. But in this particular movie, or at least these three movies, and just progressively got worse, it is like all the bad stuff that you've seen in the comics, that somehow they took that instead of the good stuff, or at least tried to meld both good and the bad from the comics and put it in the film. Neither one of them are attentive to each other's feelings, and it's like, she's like in her play and doing well and so far. She's, so concerned about like, the audience doesn't seem like they was applauding that loud, from her performance. And even despite after just for a second ago, saying, what's going on with you and Harry? And it's like, oh, it's complicated. No follow-up question in that. Oh, how was I? And it's like, I mean, dang it, it's her night, so she's probably not too focused on that. She just like, okay, I guess he'll tell me when he's ready kind of situation, but it's, Peter is not going to, bring it up right now because it's not the time. It's about her. But what I like about this, because people talk about how, like, well, I think like when it comes to Tobey Maguire, they talk about how he's like not that good as a Spider-Man because he doesn't quip that much and it's not very talky, which I can definitely point out stuff when he is, but I get that point. By comparison to the other two Spider-Men, yeah, he doesn't, joke all that well, or at least all that much. But he's definitely a great Peter Parker because sometimes you forget in these movies he is a science geek, and when she mentions about like the not applauding, doesn't seem like the applause was that loud. Then he just goes into rambling about like the acoustics, and it's like they kind of like the acoustics kind of fool you a bit. They were clapping loud. It's just the way the sound was reverberating off the walls, and it's like coming back to a particular point. It's like that's Peter Parker. He would drag on with a scientific explanation and everything like that. It's just that's Peter. Of course, Harry's still like, you slowly, get into the, following his father's footsteps and taking the, goblin gas, and you get to see certain shots of like Norman Osborn's mask. Then there's the silver and gold looking Green Goblin mask. Then you get like Goblin Jr. mask, which is just like kind of like the Vultures thing, just a little bit, but it's like it's kind of wraps around your face. But I would have gone with the silver and gold looking one because it definitely looks a whole lot better. But so he still like have a grudge against Peter, but they're at the point in the relationship like he's getting like the I may giving him her ring that Uncle Ben gave her when he proposed because he's ready to propose and he loves her a lot. They're at a good place, so like everything's working out. Then of course Harry jumps him on his way home. They get in a fight. I remember in the theater how like the audience gasped when he nearly lost that ring. I mean, it was still an intense fight. There's certain good qualities in this film. Not gonna lie to you, but it's just like you gotta, I won't say look beyond, but you just gotta like let the bad moments, go by. You just like, I won't say tune out, but just let it do its process, and then you'll see the good stuff when it comes. It's a shame that you have to do that, but it is what it is. The fight ends with Harry getting amnesia, and this is like the most dumb, and I won't say dumb, but it's just that it's like a trope in and of itself that a lot of TV shows, especially like soap operas, do when somebody like bumps their head and they get amnesia. Smallville TV series did this a lot when somebody, especially a villain, knows Clark's identity, but then they get bumped on the head or concussion or something or other, and they forget that part. Very coincidental. Obviously, this doesn't last that long, but you get like James Franco's dopey face, through like half of the movie. But then eventually, Aunt May and Peter Parker get a call from the police, and they so happen to find out that this, Flint Marko, the Sandman, uh, you know, was also there during the night of Uncle Ben's killing, and it's like I'm thinking to myself, okay, first and foremost, when I was watching this in my theater with my father, cause he took me to see this, and he's not like a superhero geek or anything like that, but he knows a few bits here and there, and he knows definitely well that the fucking Sandman was never a part of this, and he thought it was kind of like weird. He made a noise or like what, and like he just like he was flabbergasted himself that like they decided to make that choice because like the robber throughout like the history of Spider-Man was a solo thing. He was just like a regular mugger. He ain't had no partner. They kind of like shoehorn that in just to give some kind of stakes or urgency for Spider-Man to track this guy down and kind of revitalize that, pain again. It's like a very manufactured kind of thing. It's like you didn't really need that. By and large, that has been settled in one. This is like a whole separate issue with because like I said, Sam Raimi only wanted Sandman. They could have done anything just centered around Sandman, because Sandman in of itself, according to the information that I looked up, Thomas Hayden Church, when he was like researching the Sandman and he was like going through the role, he wanted to like treat Sandman like those old classic monster movies like Frankenstein's monster or the creature of the Black Lagoon. And you can see that, and it's like him trying to like because he's an escapee prisoner, but he also still loves his daughter. He's estranged from his wife, or at least former wife, and his daughter's sick. She needs money. She doesn't. The ex-wife obviously doesn't have it. He definitely doesn't have it. So he's going to resort to like stealing money to try to, because like damn anything else, he's going to save his daughter. Very relatable, or at least understandable motivation why he just push come to shove, he's going to save his daughter's life. It's kind of like the movie John Q with Denzel Washington, where he like takes over a hospital at gunpoint to like force an operation to save his son's life. It's not. I mean, I'm not a parent myself, but I don't condone it, but I get it. And so in between that time, while like he's like Peter's listening on the radio, like police radio scanner. He's just laying there, in his Spider-Man costume, just like waiting for any kind of news on Flint Marko is dead at night. And then the symbiote, that hits the ride on his, on him to get to his place, it starts like crawling. And you talk about like monster movies, and credit to Sam Raimi, the way that he the way the CGI worked to simulate this kind of like crawling slime beast kind of thing. Like you see like in Shadow, the way it was like trying to climb and forming like a face, and it's like snarling a bit, and it starts like stitching and latching on, and just eventually just covers his whole face, and then he kind of wakes, and Peter wakes up, and the suit is a little slightly more bulkier, just to emphasize that it's making him more stronger, and it's like he's a little more faster. The simulator kind of increases Peter's skills, I think twice fold. And you also got to deal with like Eddie Brock and everything like that, with played by Topher Grace, which I gotta say is, I don't think like back then I didn't care, because I knew only people knew him from was that 70s show. To be honest with you, I mean, he's obviously been in other stuff, and he's been in other stuff since then. But it's just that, whew, I mean, like, I don't know what the thought process was behind. I guess because he maybe was a hot thing at that time. Because I think maybe like that '70s show was still playing at that time, so he was a hot thing. So they figured, like, okay, let's grab this guy. And if Hugh Jackman, he was like the reverse of perfect casting. Like Hugh Jackman was perfect casting. This is the reverse of that. And and it's not like he's not a great actor. He's just like he wasn't like appropriate for the role. He's like he was more puny. I won't say more puny, but slightly punier than Tobey Maguire is. And if you look up Eddie Brock, he is like, he's not like the size of the Rock. I would equate him to like what's appropriate? Less than Dave Bautista, but it's kind of like what's the appropriate size? Maybe Tom Hardy. Well, Tom Hardy is already currently Eddie Brock Venom in the Venom movies, but kind of like that, because Tom Hardy is a very well built dude, so kind of like that, but it didn't seem like an appropriate fit, and I get what they were trying to do, because Eddie Brock is like, at least at that time, as we knew him, wasn't a good person. He's changed a lot over the years. He's currently like a good guy now, and so is the symbiote. But at that time, Eddie Brock was selfish. He had like a troubled backstory. Was like father beating him. He got cancer. His girlfriend left him. By and large, he got fired mostly because he blames Peter Parker and Spider-Man, because in the comics, Eddie Brock was trying to find this serial killer and get the exclusive photos, and then because he was premature in his investigation and started getting the bugle to print everything, which you kind of hint at in this film, where he's trying to discredit Spider-Man and Photoshop older picture to make it look like he's stealing money. He when Spider-Man cast the killer in the comics, he like in the movie, Bugle had to retract the previous thing, and because of that, Eddie Brock got fired. So life just shitted all over Eddie Brock, and which leads to him eventually meet up with the symbiote and having like a complete grudge against Peter Parker / Spider-Man. And because of the symbiote's knowledge, he knows who Spider-Man is, and became the most terrifying nemesis former nemesis in Spider-Man's Rose Gallery. And in this, he Peter Parker does the Spider-Man thing, and little by little you see the corruption happening. He got into like emo Peter look, because they even darken Tobey Maguire's hair, and it's like, I notice in like certain shots when like he's slowly realizing what he's doing in certain, like after a moment has passed, and he's getting that revelation look on his face, and it's like, oh my god, what I just do? And like the lighting on his hair kind of looks like is back to his normal hair color. But when in certain instances where he's like I'm going to need this kind of power, and it's like his hair is back to being darkened. When he finally tracks down Flynn Marko, this is like the most brutal, and it's like, this is like Sam Raimi being allowed to just cut loose in the directing, because you can't have Spider-Man mutilate somebody, but you can get away with it if the person he's mutilating is made out of sand. So you see uh Spider-Man just pushing, like underneath on the ground, like, as trains going by, pushing his face up against moving train carts, as like his face getting like, disintegrated, and teeth flying at the screen and everything like that. It is just like dang near horrific, the way the fight went out, and it's kind of cool. It's like Spider-Man just being allowed to just push all that preconceived notions of morality aside and just cut loose. This is what people would, this is probably what J. Jonah Jameson's fear of Spider-Man is, behind the scenes, that he's just an overall just monster. You know, but he kind of doesn't really think that. But it's just, it's, it depends on the writer. But he is like, this fight was intense. Like, it's probably one of the favorite parts in this film, when like these two go at it and discover like Sandman's weakness is like water or something that's liquid based, or even like liquid nitrogen, something that keep him relatively solid for him to be captured or punched unconscious. So he assumes that he killed Flint Marko, but then he goes to Aunt May to tell her the good news that Spider-Man killed him, and like, Aunt May doesn't like that notion, like, oh, Spider-Man can't kill him. He's actually a good person, like revenge, despite what she was told about what Flint Marko did. You can't succumb to revenge, because it's like a poison and it will eat you inside out. And it's like Rosemary Harris, some people don't appreciate those long-winded speeches, but when she eventually gets to the point, it kind of speaks volumes to the circumstances in whatever particular movie. And this one is just like, kind of like gives the revelation to Peter that, like, was that wrong for me to do? It's like, and it's like, I mean, obviously it was done better in the comics and in certain TV shows like Spectacular Spider-Man and the 90s TV show. But this still hints at it, where you can, if you pay attention, the inner struggle of Peter Parker. And it's like obviously feeding off, what he's already feeling, is like the ego, and it's like the need for revenge against, someone that is still alive, that took someone important from him in life. And the symbiote is feeding off of that, and it's like he's just dragging him down this kind of pit. And it took Peter just a while to even come to understanding, like up to the point when it's like in like, because of course he's doing this whole emo Peter dance and stuff like that, which is weird. Some people starting to like it, and then eventually, other women starting to get disgusted. And it's like, I don't know. It is dumb. It's probably one of the dumbest parts in the movie, but it's, ironically, by this point, it's like funny. Even in Spider-Verse movie, they reference that, and it's like, it just not become cool. It's just a funny reminder of what happened. But yeah, the inner struggle, the turmoil, it's like, and we all can relate to this. It's like the whole, if you ever watch my Jackie Chan Adventures, season reviews, you can check that out on the channel. The links are in the description. But yeah, definitely follow me if you want my thoughts on the Jackie Chan Adventures seasons, like 1 through 5, and each in separate videos. It was the first one that I talked about, like the Tiger Talisman, and it's all about like, the balancing the yin and the yang. And it's like, as Jackie like get those split apart, his good half is separate from his dark half, and it's like his Uncle mentions, like, the Dark Half is not, don't get twisted like the Dark Half is like, oh, he's just evil, by definition of being dark. No, you know, you know, you know, it's not evil. He's just misguided without the good side to guide him, and that's what's happening here. It's like, because of the symbiote, his dark yang side is kind of like just slowly encompassing, what little good, that is still in the host. And it didn't come to a head until at the club when he's taking Gwen to the nightclub where MJ is working, and this is like a while after they had like an argument, him and Peter, her and Peter, and of course, because he got in like a scuffle with some other dude in a crowd, he accidentally, I won't say accidentally, he just like, just did not care who was in the way, and it's like somebody's trying to pull him off, and he just like, just backhands Mary Jane, and she asks like, what are you, like, who are you? And it kind of snaps him back, into the moment, because he's losing himself at this point. And of course, he eventually gets the suit off by sound. Sound is his weakness, but the symbiote's weakness, sound and fire. But Harry Osborn is also kind of like meddling into the affairs of their relationship, because after he gains his, she's feeling neglected because, like, the heads of the play is removing her from the play altogether, because I guess nobody really didn't like her, or at least critics did not like her, which is ironic because Kristen Dunst is supposed to be a great actress, and she's being let go. She's losing, confidence in herself and her abilities and her goals. It's kind of like a flip flop from what happened from Spider-Man 2 up to this point, where now Peter's on top and Mary Jane's at the bottom of the barrel. And just like, Peter, in the second movie was still giving her flowers and praising her for her accomplishments, Mary Jane, she's supportive on the outside, but deep down it's obvious she's like kind of hurting. She's feeling like I said, like, losing confidence in herself, being insecure. And this is kind of moments when the significant other needs to be there for her, but Peter's too self-involved, or at least enjoying the limelight too much to completely pay attention in his surroundings. So she goes to Harry's place. He still have an amnesia. They sitting there dancing and everything like that while trying to cook, and they end up sharing a kiss. She leaves, but then he's starting to get like, his memories coming back with like, Willem Dafoe coming back for a split second to remind him of his mission. And then he kind of convinces her to break up with him, just by threats and what have you. So you get this bigger fight later on between Harry and Peter when it's pretty much come to the head. And it was like a funny moment, and I completely forgot about this moment because it cracked me up in the theater, and a lot of people in the theater, when it's like, Harry's like, I protected you in high school, now I'm gonna kick your little ass. And Peter like, ooh. It's like, his face is like, ooh. I did that for a long while after that scene. It was like when somebody says something that's like snarky or whatever, and I was like, ooh. Just the zero fucks Peter gives when he's in Dark Peter mode. But it all comes in head. Uh, Peter comes on top. Harry tries to throw a bomb at him. He dodges it, obviously. It's like, it's fucking Spider-Man. You don't think he can dodge anything that's coming from behind him that's going to kill him. And he webs the bomb and throws it right back at him, causing it to nearly kill him and kind of fried his face a little bit on the side. And so after he gets rid of the symbiote, realizing what it's doing to him, and in a roundabout way affecting anybody in his around him, and it's like that kind of thing is like, if you in his head, you will imagine that if I did this to MJ without thinking, I do not want to be around Aunt May if I'm like this. God forbid if I'm, because it's another funny moment when he's going to his apartment, and it's like, it's a funny line, and like a lot of people quote it, and it's like when the landlord dude, it's like, rent, not now. It's like, it's like, rent. It's like, and like, you'll get your rent when you fix this damn door. And then he's just, just shocking the daughter and the landlord. And it's like, for a brief moment, you get this little, well, this is two moments, but for that moment, you see like the landlord, who actually, obviously, actually thinks, Peter is actually a good kid, and he just, I guess, bugs him out of care. And it's like, he's like, from that little moment, it's like he never acts that way. He's usually like he's always been like such a nice person. He doesn't, like, no matter who bugs him, he's always kept the chin up. It's like something must be happening, or something must be wrong. And it's like you get a later interaction between the two after he got rid of the symbiote, and it's like he gives him, like, some advice. Doesn't seem like a very good advice, but you get the point of just kind of like, I think it was about that relationship. I'm blanking on it right now, but it's like, pretty much like, it's like, chin up, it's gonna be okay kind of situation. And it's like a nice little moment. It shows like despite outbursts or whatever, it kind of reminds me of the Bruce Almighty thing I did a review of, which you can also check out on the channel, when, like, Morgan Freeman God mentions, like, no matter how big of a mess you make, you can always clean it right up. And I think that's something like Peter's like starting to learn, is like I made a mess of things. Like, I gotta take responsibility of my mess, despite any kind of outside interference from the symbiote. It was still me. It was feeding off of. It was my, because it's kind of like Smallville, where Clark gets a hold of red kryptonite that kind of brings out his negative personality, his kind of like inhibitions and stuff like that, stuff that he usually keeps inside, or keeps under control, because like you can't just say or do everything that you want, but it's kind of lets it all go. And it's like, I want to do whatever the hell I want. I want to say whatever I want, and it's like that kind of situation, just like no holds barred, without any kind of concern of anybody's feelings or consequences. And this is essentially what the symbiote did. It's kind of like the red kryptonite scenario. It's like the symbiote just brought out what he wanted to do. He wanted to get revenge on Flynn Marko and kill him, despite on any normal circumstances he wants to bring him in to answer for his crimes, and that's that. No matter what, but no matter his anger towards him, and it's just like, and normally Peter wouldn't dare to, like, just knowing he still's with MJ, but still brings on Gwen Stacy on a date, especially where MJ works at. That's like a douchey move by any circumstances. So he has to own up to all that and just, you know, work towards fixing all those mistakes. Uh, so you know, Eddie Brock as Venom now teams up with Flynn Marko to kill Spider-Man. So they had this big construction site, film cameras, everywhere, and like Peter tried to get Harry to help, but Harry's just like, get the hell out. So he's sitting there dealing with those two by himself. Then this is the one of the big issues that a lot of people could not stand, and me included, where this butler that's been working with the Osborns throughout these entire movies, saying like I've been keeping my mouth shut for a while, Harry. Like, it was no doubt that the blaze that pierced your father's body was from his own glider. And it's like, fire his ass. Because, like, you let this man... Because you know what's been going on in his house, like you said. Like, these are Green Goblins, and what they do is, like, pretty effed up on his own right. But the fact that you let this boy think that his best friend killed his father when it was his own father's fault for dying, and it's like you just kept silent, you are fired. Like, it's like, you're lucky he doesn't kill you outright, but like it was a weird reaction where he's just like, silence and tearful and hugs him and stuff like that. It's like, no, that makes no sense. Like, you let this carry on. What would happen if, he would end up killing this kid? You just, been quiet about it? I was like, that part was weird. I would have, got this, I would have fired that man on the spot. But then he later shows up, helps Peter take down Sandman while Peter is dealing with Venom. And it's like, Venom ended up killing Harry. They give enough time for them to reconcile. He eventually stops Eddie Brock, using the sound waves from like pipes and stuff like that, separating the two, and then using the pumpkin bomb to, blow up the symbiote. But Eddie jumps in and kills himself in desperation to get a hold of that symbiote. Because he's pretty much like, hates Spider-Man and Peter. It was like, he's feel like he's ruined and everything like that, because he's the one that didn't take responsibility for his own actions. It's like, it's kind of like, Eddie Brock in this film, or at least in general, supposed to have been like the negative Peter, like, Peter's, like Bizarro Peter, where it's like he would do anything for a scoop, he would cross any lines, like he just be as douchey as possible, even to Photoshop and fabricate a photo just to get a big desk job at the Daily Bugle. And it's like, it's kind of like a comeuppance, I guess. But then you get like interactions between Sandman and Peter, when he like explains that, yeah, I was there, but I didn't intend to hurt him. I just wanted the car. He was trying to help me and, tell me to, give up this life of crime and everything like that. But then he got startled by his partner running out of the building, and the gun went off. And it's like, like, I'm sorry. It was a complete accident. And then, Peter, as told by, Aunt May, is like, you gotta learn to do the hardest part in forgiving yourself, and so that way you can forgive others. And it's like, that's understandable. It's like, like I said, looking back on this, I can understand like the parallels a bit more, that, Peter never truly forgave himself for what happened, despite, coming clean with Aunt May in the second movie. He never truly forgave himself from, dragging Uncle Ben out, or at least going out there, and if he didn't go out there, Uncle Ben wouldn't have felt the need to come with him. And so, like, he was the first domino in that effect. but you know, he had to learn to forgive himself and let that pain go. So in turn, he feel more inclined to forgive Marco now, for his hand in his whole mess, seeing that he's you know not a bad person. There's like he mentions, like, I'm not a bad person. I just uh uh like have bad luck or make bad choices kind of situation. Then he kind of flies away in sand, not knowing if he's gonna commit another crime. He's still got a sick daughter, never brought up again. Uh, but whatever. But then, I mean, I kind of appreciate this now than I probably did back then, because it was still kind of raw. Uh, the fact that this movie was like, kind of like a letdown. It kind of ended this saga or trilogy on a sour note. But now, with the ending where it's like Peter's like, everything is kind of like in like a decent place. MJ is singing at a little lounge at this point. That's where she currently works, I guess. Not knowing how her future is at this point, as far as like, because acting was her dream, and who knew she can sing? And now I'm thinking about it, it's like she's just been in plays, but now lately she's just like, she sings in the plays too. So Peter walks in, and just sits down, and just like mentioned before, because it's kind of like calls back to what MJ said, that she got a dream that she wants to sing in front of people, and she wants sing or act in front of people, and she wants Peter there in the front row. And you see that it kind of books in exactly what she always wanted: singing in front of people, and then Peter's right there in the front row. And it's never I want to say it was not even illustrated or even dialogue heavy about it. It never officially said, like, it's left to our perspective, our own minds, that they probably reconciled, they slowly getting things back on track, not obviously rushing into marriage. They never even brought that back up, because it's obviously not in a good place. They're still not in a good place, but they're going to be slowly building themselves back up. But it's kind of left on like an unsure note, not necessarily a dour note, but it's like, here we are at this point, and I'm just going to be there for my girl, and we're going to work at this. And it's like, I don't mind it. Not everything has to end in like a necessarily happy ending. Of course, you would like a happy ending, obviously, but this is probably the happiest that this is going to be concluded, given the fact that what transpired throughout the film. It started off at like a good, happy, everybody's loving Spider-Man. Peter's like on top of the world, and now it's kind of like a little more solemn of a note, and it's still not good. But after much time has passed, so many other movies came out, the MCU started, and we have a fair share of other bad movies to criticize that's much worse than this by a long shot. Me personally, I think Thor: The Dark World was probably the only bad MCU film that they had, aside from maybe like Inhumans, but I think that's more so a TV show, I think. But then, of course, you had like Catwoman and Elektra. This is far more worse. At least Spider-Man 3 was still campy and entertaining despite its bad stuff. You can still get a laugh. You can still enjoy certain fight scenes. It's stuff to enjoy in this film. And And I do feel bad that Sam Raimi had to apologize for this. Or am I conflicting him with Joel Schumacher? I think Joel Schumacher had to apologize for Batman and Robin. But either way, it was, either director, it wasn't their fault because the studio constantly micromanaging them and telling like, oh, you gotta, make this make sure you have it for kids, or add this character or this, that, and the other, instead of just allowing the director just to make his film. And 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 by and large, I think Sam Raimi, despite the interference from the studios and their little mandates, he produced as best of a quality he could at that time, and I think that alone should be appreciated and acknowledged. And you know, he despite everything, he put out a pretty decent product. It was still lackluster by comparison to the other two, but it's still a decent Spider-Man movie. And that was my thoughts on the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to Talkative Carl on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. All the links are in the description. If you want to support the channel, that's patreon.com/talkativecarl. The link is in the description. And now, next week and the week after, I'll be going into the Mark Webb, Andrew Garfield films. And then after that, of course, we'll begin to I think I'll be going to Venom, because I'm doing Venom 1, and then Venom 2 will be coming out not too long when I'm doing Venom 1. So I want to make sure I get those out back to back. Then I'm going to get into, I think Spider-Verse can be right after that. Then I will go to the Tom Holland stuff. But I'm at the same time I will be going through I'm going to be doing right after this the Dark Knight Rises, and then I just decided to do all the other Batman films, Tim Burton's and Schumacher's along the way. So yeah, I will see you guys for the Rises video, and take care, and I'll see you guys soon.